Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Marius Young Park at West LINN and how to approach it when fishing, especially from a bank. So first of all, I want to get out of the way is that West LINN, the Marius Young Park, its accessibility is a little bit of a problem, alright? And I don't mean that there's no parking or anything. The park is actually very big and it's great for that. But in terms of walking down to a bank to go fish, it's kind of a long walk. So if you have a wagon or something and you want to carry a lot of gear, I suggest you bring a wagon with you. Otherwise, I would suggest you to pack light. The simple reason is because it's typically anywhere from a 5-10, and if you really want to go to the more outer parts of a bank, it's going to be like a 15-minute walk, and it's going to be a very, very steep hill. So just keep that in mind. Try to pack light, especially in the summer. You know, after you went out down there, fish for what, like 2-3 hours. You walk back up, that like uphill is really gonna be annoying, and you don't want to do that. And stay hydrated in the summer always when fishing. So I just want to put that out there. So if you have a kayak or any like thing you can access from a river, that would be amazing. Especially because there's a boat launch at Cedar Oak Boat Ramp, which is just like unload your kayak, float it down the river. You can fish on a bank, or you can fish on a kayak if you want to. This video is mainly going to be talking about bank fishing, but if you want to talk about, if you want to know about kayak, leave a comment in the section below, and I might make a video on that later. So without further ado, let's get into it. The park itself, I'm going to divide it into 3 sections. The first section is going to be called the island, and the second section, I'm just going to call it the middle, and the lower one is the cove, alright? I'm basing these on like geographic features of the park. So starting with the top, alright, the island in question is Cedar Island. And what Cedar Island is essentially, it's like a horseshoe-shaped island. It's not technically Marius Young Park, but for a good amount of the year, from anywhere from I think June-ish all the way till like maybe October, November, you can access that park from Marius Young. And that's the only way you can access that park on land. If you have a kayak or a boat or anything, you can access it year long. Just launch off Cedar Oak Boat Ramp and you just go into the island, like the horseshoe cove of the island. But if you want to go on land, the only option you got is Marius Young. And the Marius Young has a bridge over to the island, but the bridge is seasonal. So when it's not seasonal, the water, depending on the tide, could be anywhere from ankle deep, or even you could just flat out walk onto over with if like water's so shallow that some parts of the rocks are sticking out, you could just like walk over dry. Sometimes it's gonna go all the way up to your chest or even above over your head. Like the tide rate changes very fast. Also, I have been in situations where when I walked over there, the water's so shallow I could just walk across dry, but when I come back I have to need to waste deep water. So be careful if you're approaching it without a bridge. There is a chance that you might have to maybe even swim your way back. Just putting that out there. Tides change very fast. Be mindful. Check the tide charts if you want to approach it this way. And so for the sake of this video, I'm just going to talk about fishing from a part of the Marius Young part of that channel. Alright, the Cedar Island is a very large island. Well, I wouldn't say very large island, but in terms of fishing opportunities, it has so much that I think it deserves its own video. I've seen a lot of fishermen go on the island, but in terms of fishing, they're not that much. And partially because it's a very limited access point, because if you walk down there, over on your left, it's going to be private property. You can't fish there. Well, you can't even walk there. So very little broad open space that you can fish with. But there are still fishing opportunities. And there are 2 approaches I would take. One is with bait and the other one's with lures, right? Again, this channel is very dependent on tide charts. And by that, I mean, it could be anywhere from like 2 to 3, maybe 5 feet deep, anywhere to 10, 12 feet deep. And I'm just going to say average is about 5 to 6 most of the time I went. And in terms of lures, I'd go with generally like these medium divers. I think shallow diving crankbaits, you really don't have that much opportunity to use there. It really doesn't get that shallow most of the time. If it gets that shallow, I'll probably just head across the island. So most of the time I use medium divers, maybe deep divers, depending on the situations. Very snaggy and rocky down there. So crankbait is amazing. Water typically moves very fast out there too. Of course, there are lots of panfish also, other than like smallmouth bass, which you would approach with crankbaits. For panfish, I would say just drop a worm around the rock crevices, and the panfish will come out. They'll bite it if they're there. The other thing I want to talk about in the channel is that there is a good chance you can fly fish for them. For fly fishing, I would say stay away from dry flies. The flies that I think is most successful there, like from my experience and from what I see other people use, it's going to be streamers, and go with a white and blue pattern, because the baitfish there's going to be some like small types of shad I've seen swimming there, and there's going to be bluegill swimming there. So these small like white and blue type of colors are going to be amazing for catching these smallmouth bass. And for crappie and everything, you could jig around with like these little like hair jigs. You could jig around with the soft plastics, whatever. You could try that. Not very effective. I would say worm is the most effective if you want to catch panfish there. The other thing is you could catch is catfish, right? There's going to be channel cats, and there's going to be bullheads. And I've also seen some like randomly coming here. There's going to be suckers that come in the spring. There might be some carp. If you're lucky, you might get some carp also. For these, I just say throw a Carolina rig down there and throw a piece of worm on a size 2 to 6 hook. That's going to be your best bet if you want to catch these. Chicken liver does work, but I will make a video about talking about catfishing in Oregon later, maybe next week. But worm is still one of the most effective and also one of the most accessible baits you could use to catch catfish around here. So just go with that, and that's going to be your best bet. Now, moving on, all right, the middle of the island. The middle of the island, it's not that effective. And I say this for one reason, because the middle of the island is just a very large sand flat, all right, and it's very big also. It's basically all the way from the top of the island, top of a park, so where it borders the island, all the way down to a cove, which I'm going to talk about last. This huge sandy flat area it doesn't host that much structure. If you go out, maybe like 20, I'd say in terms of castability, unless it's low tide, you can't really cast to that. Like there's like 10 to 20 feet drop off out there in the middle of the river. If you look at the contour maps, unless it's a low tide, you can't really cast out there. The castability is very much an issue because it's the very wide part of the Willamette River right there. So if you have a kayak, great. You could go out there, target the little drop-off spots. In terms of structures, there's like these random rock piles out there, but it doesn't really host that much fish. And you're going to be fishing out there for like a very, very long time. Fan casting, just trying to like hit every spot, and maybe you'll catch something. But middle part of the island is where I would personally never go. Well, I wouldn't say I'd never go unless I go to a top around the island. I can't get across the island, so I fish the channel a little bit, and I go down to a cove and I fish a little bit, nothing else. I still want to fish more. I'll probably go to a sandy flat. But it's going to be my last order of choice if I'm fishing in Marius-Yon. And in terms of how to catch fish there, best bet, go with anything like a Carolina rig type of thing. You know, weight on bottom, hook. You know, just you could, if you have a bigger gear, cast that thing a mile far, casting in the middle of the river, you might catch yourself a sturgeon. You never know. Now, the cove. The cove is going to be a very interesting, it's probably the most interesting part about this Marius-Yon Park. And that is because it varies a lot. The fishing there varies a lot depending on tides, all right? High tides, it's very hard to access there because when the tide is actually that high, there's not that much places in the park you go to. Like, it's all flooded. But when the tide is low, it's quite amazing, right? What happens is the cove, it kind of like the water starts like dropping so low that it forms a little like large like pond structure in there. The bottom structure there is a mix of rock and sand. All right, so it's not as much snaggy as all the way up in the channel of the island, but it's still a little bit snaggy. Again, here I would use techniques similar to what I would use in the island channel. So crankbaits, right? But also with there, I might also throw out some for larger fish. Ooh, might also throw out some of these jigs, because there's lots of these fallen logs and stuff over there that you could target. Throw out like a bass jig. Sinkos, definitely, if you want to do that. Just like a straight tail worm, a stick worm, rig it on a hook, just Texas rig it, check it in. You definitely catch like a smallmouth or a largemouth. And the species varies a lot, right? You got it because it's cove, like the water is super calm. So largemouth comes there during the summer, but smallmouth also travels there because it's still in a bigger part of the river. You're gonna get all types of panfish. There's crappie there. Crappie, bluegills, all that sort. You also, I'm not seeing much catfish and carp, but they are in there. From time to time, it really depends on the tide again. Well, my friends, he caught, I think, a 3-pound or 5-pound bass, largemouth there. Like, the big fish are definitely in there. But most of the time, for Marathon overall, it's unlikely that you're gonna get skunked, but most of the time, I go there, Albert goes there. We typically get like small fish. We occasionally get some large ones. I personally caught a couple of my PBs there, but I don't really varies a lot. If you know what you're doing, I'm gonna say it's a very good chance that you're not gonna get skunked. You're gonna catch something, but you really have to like work and figure things out by throwing this, throwing that in order to catch a PB. And sometimes it's really just a matter of luck. But tide does play a very important factor because you're going to be fishing beside the river, and all these cove structures, whether it's on the island or at the bottom of cove, it's going to be varying a lot on the tide. And also fly fishing, right? It also works here. Fly fishing works overall the home area, Young Park, maybe not the sandy flats. In the middle part, you could fly fish for them. If it's very shallow, there's rock structures you could try, but not my best bet. Worms at a cove spot. I want to talk about this. So, doesn't matter if it's at a cove spot or it's at a island spot. Worms, what I do, I take these little jig heads. I'm not sure if you can see them. I'll take one out. So basically, these like little jig heads. What I would do, I would just like thread a little piece of worm on them, and then I just jig it, right? That is one of the most effective techniques I have ever seen, and it really just works, right? Just put a little worm on there, and then just jig it. You give it motion, the worm gives it itself motion. The worm has a scent that attracts the fish, and just works perfectly. Especially because these jig heads are pretty small, and they wouldn't get snagged as much in the crevices. It's still gonna happen, so I typically buy a lot of these jig heads because they get snagged so often, but they're also cheap, so it doesn't really matter. So just jig that thing around the crevices, around rocks, around structures, and you're almost, it's a better bet than throwing, let's say, a Carolina rig. And because Carolina rigs in these locations, in these rocky locations, get snagged so easily. And talking about snags, the other technique I would like to use is drop shots, right? Rig, right? I'm not sure if you guys can see here. So what I have here is I have a little hook, right? With a wacky rigged worm, and all the way down here, maybe like a foot or so, 18 inches, I get this little weight. And these weights are amazing, right? These are clip-on weights, so if you lose them, you don't lose the whole rig. This thing just like falls off and just tied around. So not wacky rig, I'm sorry. Drop shot rig are amazing for these locations because these rocks, you're gonna get snagged so often that if you do, I mean, you don't lose the rest of your rig. Especially drop shot rig, the part of the hook, it's so annoying to tie. I don't want to tie it. So really just pull off, clip number one on. Pull off, clip number one on. It's very convenient. Drop shot rig is very convenient. Again, with these snaggy spots, Texas rig, especially weightless Texas rig, if you just pull through everything, and these sinkos or these stick worms, if you Texas rig it and keep a hook, you do a trick where I'm sure you've seen it. The trick where you kind of like hide the hook point within a plastic a little bit, it's pretty much just absolutely snagless, and you're gonna save yourself so much money off buying new lures. The other technique about worms fishing, right, other than the jig technique, it's gonna be doing just a typical bobber, because the cove is really not that deep in the summer, so you could bobber fish it very efficiently. You know, just standard bobber rig. Depending on the depth of it, leave anything from a foot to 18 inches to maybe even 2 feet. Just hang that worm down there. The fish are gonna bite it. It's a pretty good place. Smallmouth, for smallmouth especially, Marius Sound is like one of the best places to catch smallmouth around the West Lynn Lake Oswego area. Of course, there are other places such as the island, which I think arguably could be better, but because Marius Sound covers such a far stretch of the river that in terms of just catching fish, you're just gonna have a better chance. But catching big fish, I'm not gonna say not so much, but it's gonna be a lot more difficult because Marius Sound is, after all, bigger park, more fishing pressure, and it's gonna be, you know, just generally so much snags. It's gonna be pretty annoying, and catching big fish is just not gonna be as easy as it is catching it in a more less pressure location such as Oswego Lake. All right, speaking of which, if you want to check out some of the videos I made, they're in the link below. And best luck to anyone who wants to go out there and catch some fish. If you like this video, please subscribe, like, and share. Leave it in the comments below on which fishing location you think I should break down next. I mean, it's a winter time. It's what we're doing here on this channel. We're breaking down fishing locations around Oregon. And Fish the Freshwater, out.